let's talk a little bit about the Federal Reserve. Here we are, mid-September, early September, the 10th of September, 2025, a week from today, at the exact same time this call starts. We're going to get the Fed's kind of shit or get off the pot decision. Now, just to give you a little background, the Federal Reserve has been artificially holding interest rates too high for too long. And the market, everybody agrees that they are now at least 150 basis points above where they should be. In other words, you go back in the history of the Federal Reserve, all Federal Reserves that were not partial or biased to a particular party, and which has never happened till now, would always they were independent. They'd let the thing float. And so, we should have been dropping interest rates because we beat inflation probably 8-9 months ago, something like that. I mean, they're worried that it's potentially going to be 2.1. Their stated goal is 2%. 2.1 is close enough. The employment rate has dropped dramatically. The not only loss of jobs due to AI primarily, but the decrease in the number of new jobs created are significant factors. And this has happened not just in the last 30 days. This has happened probably for a year now. They've been at least a year, and it could even be like a year and a half. I have to go back to my notes and look that they have been behind, significantly behind. So there's some politicking going on. Number one, Trump fired an ultra liberal member of what's called the Board of Governors. That's what makes up the Fed. Votes against all the time, votes against dropping interest rates, always wants to have interest rates raising. Initially, the first appellate court at the federal level said he couldn't fire, and then day before yesterday, Supreme Court gave him the green light, and said, yes, you have the ability to fire basically anybody in the government. So she's going to be out. Now, there was a vacancy starting, I guess, at the end of January this year, and the Senate is rushing right now to approve a guy, I think his name is Stephen Millan or something like that, trying to get him in before next Wednesday's meeting so he gets a vote. Now, the way this thing works is all the governors vote, and essentially majority rules on this thing. So it's almost like a regular political thing now. You want to stuff the court with, stuff the judiciary with your candidates. You want somebody who's going to be reasonable and responsible. At a minimum, you want somebody who doesn't have their head up their backside, like the chairman of the Federal Reserve does now. We've talked about this many times. These guys, for the last year and a half, are like a bunch of drunk fraternity guys showing up late to the party, coming drunk, throwing up all over the furniture, passing out, and then not leaving. And they came late, and they didn't do what they're supposed to do, and they're not getting out of the way. And that's literally what's happening here. So we need 150 basis points drop. And the problem is they waited so long, we can't get there quick enough. If they were to do 150 basis points, which means 1.5%, 150 basis points to bring us where we should be with the current economy, it would collapse this economy, China's economy, Russia's economy. It's a serious thing. It's a real problem. And the Federal Reserve, they're like Nero. They're fiddling while Rome is burning. And we got a real problem because the market's already priced in the 25 basis points drop. There's a good chance they could go 50 basis points next Wednesday here at the same time. But they really need to have some drastic changes. Now, it's been years since the Federal Reserve has done what they call intra-meeting. There's a meeting every month about the middle part of the month, I think 11 of the 12 months. And they have just a handful of times, and it's been a significant number of years when they had to drop or raise, and they've never raised it intra-meeting, but they have had to drop it. And they may have to go do that. That is going to, if they do that, that means they finally woke up and recognized that they are really behind the eight ball. They are really hurting the economy. Most of these job losses could have been staved off had we had 150 basis points less interest. It's essentially destroyed the new house market. It's destroying the resale house market because interest rates are too high. Now they're down last week. And they seem to still be down this week, but we're not down far enough until the Fed. And by the way, interest rates on homes, mortgages, are not based on what the Fed does. They're based on what the US government, the Treasury does, which is called a 10-year T-bill. And they're a function of that number plus 1-3 points or 100 to 300 basis points. That's how mortgages are calculated. But they still take their cue from the Federal Reserve. You know, the Federal Reserve, especially with this chairman, they've destroyed the reputation of the Federal Reserve as a nonpartisan, smart group of people who, you know, irregardless of who's in the White House or what is going on, it didn't matter even when we had 9/11 and the Great Recession, all these things, they unilaterally or collectively, they unilaterally did whatever they needed to do to make sure that the economy kept going. The excuses they're using now have been flimsy for months. They are no longer valid. And there is going to be in my prediction, I'm going to see there's going to be a big uprising after the first of the year. Now that we've got Supreme Court validation that allows the president of the United States to fire a Fed member. Now, the Fed members are appointed, they have to be approved by the Senate, and their job is for 14 years. So it's the longest of any civil servant job type things, except for the US Supreme Court, which they're appointed and approved by the Senate for life. And literally a lot of those guys, you know, they croak right on the bench and they stay until the party's over and the place has been cleaned out. But these Fed guys will tend to hang on their entire time. That's not going to happen now. The US Supreme Court is backing up, which is clearly the constitutional provision that allows the president to fire government employees that aren't doing their job. So after the first of the year, I think you're going to see, and potentially later in this quarter or later in next quarter, October, November, December, you're going to see a semi-mass firing of people from the Federal Reserve, and they're going to be replaced with people like our Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent. This guy is brilliant. He understands money. He's grown big billion-dollar businesses himself. Most of the Federal Reserve members are academians. Most of them have never set a foot in a private business. These guys teach at university level. It's all a bunch of BS theory. There's no nexus with reality, and so it's a real problem. And it is hurting our economy. It has been hurting our economy the last probably year and a half. But it's going the magnification of hurt is going to go up. It's like an earthquake. When it goes from a 6 to 7, it's like 100 times more powerful. It's that type of problem we're getting into now. We're so far behind the curve in terms of dropping interest rates that it's a wound up, string. It's a wound up rubber band, and when it opens, it's boom, it's going to blow. So they're going to have to do something. I wouldn't be surprised if they did 50 basis points next Wednesday, but at least 25%. And we're going to have to, when you do the math, they're projected to be 175 basis points behind the market by this fall. But now you've got literal unemployment. You're getting more unemployment as a result of these prices being too high. Businesses can't afford these huge interest rates. Mortgage banks aren't selling loans because people aren't buying houses and paying these kinds of high interest rates. So something's got to happen. 175 basis points. You do the math. We got September, October, November, December. You got 4 months. They can't drop that much in that period of time. It's impossible. There's going to have to be something intra meeting between the meetings, and when that happens, expect for the huge news day. When you see that, the stock market's going to drop, Bitcoin will go through the roof. Housing buyers will come out that next weekend to look for houses. It depends on what side of the coin you're on. It could be very beneficial or it could be horrible for the industry. So it's just a problem. I want to make everybody aware of it. Keep your eyes on a daily basis what the Fed does and says, because right now it makes no sense. It's the old joke of how do you know the Federal Reserve Chairman's lying? Well, if he's moving his lips, he's lying. And that's what I'm seeing right now.